I'd now like to introduce your speaker for today, Mr. Darian Rodriguez Heyman. Darian, welcome to the program. We're now ready to begin.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Really excited to be with you, and my goal over the next hour as we get into today's program is to make sure that each and every one of you really leaves not only inspired, but inspired to action. I really want to make sure that I provide some very concrete and practical tips and tools that you can put to work immediately to start raising more money. So now that we're clear about why we're here, let's dive into today's program. I do want to start very briefly by introducing myself. As you heard, my name is Darian Rodriguez Heyman. I've been in the work of really what I think of as helping people help for the last 20 years, since I devoted my entire career to social impact, having left the private sector behind. That process and transition really started with my role as the executive director of Craigslist Foundation. And I was in that role for 5 years, started their nonprofit boot camp, and that was really where I discovered this life's purpose around helping people help and working with nonprofit leaders, CEOs of mission-led businesses, impact investors, and environmental leaders to help connect them to the resources, the best practices, and the connections that they need to maximize impact. And so I do that through a variety of different ways. I'm a public speaker. I do quite a bit of executive coaching and consulting. I'm also a best-selling author. I've written a couple books. And then I'm also a part-time executive director. So the first book that I wrote after leaving Craigslist Foundation is called Nonprofit Management 101, which is really the first very comprehensive and yet practical guide to all aspects of nonprofit management, kind of covering the entire spectrum. When that came out, I launched the world's only conference series devoted to social media for social good. And so I've done a lot of work in sort of the technology for good space, including launching a mobile company called Sparrow that partners with nonprofits to serve the poor and help end cycles of poverty. And then more recently, I wrote another best-selling book, both of which are available on Amazon if you're interested. And Nonprofit Fundraising 101 is also very comprehensive and practical, but as you might imagine from the name, really just squarely focused on fundraising. So there are sections on foundation grants, but also on corporate giving, on individual donors, online, etc. And so that's a little bit about myself, but let's focus on why we're here today. And Marianne, I am getting a little bit of background noise if it's possible to mute. So, the thing I want to ask in starting out is really, I want to share that as I've spoken at conferences all over the world and especially all over the country, I've asked a lot of rooms full of nonprofit leaders, how many of you pursue foundation grants? How many of you write grants from the government, from foundations? And I see very few hands go up. And then if I dig a little bit further, if I ask how many of you have tried it in the past, almost all the hands go up.